สวัสดีครับ I'm Point from ค้นพบ So now I'm finally back from my meditation retreat here at home. At first I was planning to do somewhere between 3 or 5 days on this retreat, but as I got into it, I thought to myself that it's a wonderful learning process and I really ought to extend for 2 more days. So I did a total of 7 or 1 week. And I have to say it's been a very wonderful learning experience, which I want to share in today's reflection on how I thought it went for me, how I felt it went for me. But I can say for sure that I think meditation is a very important and very powerful thing to take on if you're interested in self-improvement or learning how to calm your mind down, learning how to see things more clearly without reacting to your emotions. It is one of the most important, I would say, the most important way to go. But before I talk about how the retreat went, I think it's important to discuss a little bit about the theory, because meditation can mean different things for different people, and there are many different practices out there. So I want to talk about the practice that I tried to follow on this retreat. So this practice, I've been following this monk online. He has a YouTube channel and he has a website. His name is Yuttadhammo Bhikkhu, a Canadian monk who came to become ordained in Thailand. And he was a student of a very famous Thai monk who, unfortunately, this Thai monk passed away in December last year, Ajahn Thong Sirimangalo. So he is now teaching meditation practice in that tradition. And it is a form of Vipassana meditation. Vipassana meditation is insight meditation. So the objective is to see things clearly. We want to learn to see our objective experience or reality without adding any interpretation or judgment to it. And this really helps you to see things more objectively and learn to manage your emotions well, learn to not react to your emotions, and thereby also learn how we cause our own suffering through the thoughts, interpretations, judgments, and attachments that we have, or likes and dislikes, right? So it's important to talk about the theory a bit. So, and Yuttadhammo Bhikkhu wrote a lot about a small booklet on how to meditate. So I'll post a link in the description below or in the comment, and also in my next post on Facebook. And I really recommend you to check it out, especially if you're interested in meditation, because he wrote this in a very, very clear way, easy to understand, easy to follow. And also he has his own YouTube channel. And I've been very fortunate because the past few months or so, he has been doing many question and answer live sessions on video. So I also practiced this meditation and also watched those videos, and it really helped to balance out between the theory and the practice. Okay, so I'm going to take a few paragraphs or excerpts from this small booklet that Yuttadhammo Bhikkhu wrote. And so the most important bit is, number 1, the highlights at least that I selected, is that in meditation, we try to create a clear awareness of every experience as it occurs. Without meditating, we tend to immediately judge and react to our experiences as good, bad, me, mine, etc., which in turn gives rise to stress, suffering, and mental sickness. By creating a clear thought about the object, we replace these sort of judgments with a simple recognition of the object as it is. The creation of a clear awareness is effected through the use of an ancient but well-known meditation tool called a mantra. A mantra refers to a word or phrase that is used to focus the mind on an object. We use the mantra to focus our attention on ordinary reality as a clear recognition of our experience as it is, free from projection and judgment. So again, to clarify, to sum up real quick, we want to note our experiences to remind ourselves to see things for what they are. So for example, if you're in a session of sitting meditation, you want to focus your attention on the objective reality, which is the sensation, the rising and falling of your stomach, your abdomen, right? So during meditation, of course, your mind might drift off and a thought might come up. But we want to recognize a thought for what it is. That is just nothing more than a thought. We want to recognize it and label it as thinking in order to pull our attention back to reality, which is the experience of our stomach rising and falling with each and every breath. Because if we don't identify a thing for what it is, then we will be lost in a train of thought, and there will be an interpretation and a judgment will arise, and that gives us an emotional feeling. We dislike the thought, we like the thought, we like this, we like that, we think about the past, we worry about the future, etc. Right? So that's to sum up what this paragraph means, or at least how I interpret it. To simplify the process of recognizing the manifold objects of experience, we traditionally separate experience into 4 categories. Everything we experience will fit into one of these 4 categories. They serve as a guide in systematizing our practice, allowing us to quickly recognize what is and what is not real, and identify reality for what it is. So number 1 is the body, the movement and the postures of the body. Number 2 is our feelings, which is categorized as bodily and mental sensations such as pain, or even feelings of happiness and calm, right? And the third component is the mind. So this is the thoughts that arise in your mind. Thoughts of the past, of the future, good thoughts, bad thoughts. And the 4th is what's called the Dhammas, as taught by Yuttadhammo Bhikkhu, this Buddhist monk. He explained here in this writing that what this 4th group is, it is the groups of your mental and physical phenomena that are specific to each meditator. So there are mental states that cloud one's awareness. In other words, for example, if your thoughts you had a thought but you weren't aware of it, and it developed into an interpretation and judgment, and maybe it gave rise to a desire, right? Maybe you're thinking about dinner and you're hungry about dinner during your meditation session, for example. So this is what the 4th experience is categorized as, and we want to note things for what they are. So for example, in noting our thoughts, like the third example, the mind, right? When we remember events in the past, whether they bring pleasure or suffering, we say to ourselves, thinking. Instead of giving rise to attachment or aversion, we simply know them for what they are, thoughts. When we plan or speculate about the future, we likewise simply come to be aware of the fact that we are thinking instead of liking or disliking the content of the thoughts, and thus avoiding fear, worry, or stress that they might bring. So that's the concept. Here's another example. When we feel angry, upset by mental or physical experiences that have arisen, or disappointed by those that have not, we recognize this as angry, or disliking. So this is a mantra, right? You're calling out the experience to remind yourself of what it is. You're feeling angry. You're disliking this thought. You're disliking this sensation, etc. When we feel sad, frustrated, bored, scared, depressed, etc., we likewise recognize each emotion for what it is. Sad, frustrated, etc. And see clearly how we are causing suffering and stress for ourselves by encouraging these negative emotional states. Once we see the negative results of anger, we will naturally incline away from it in the future. So this is where the learning process takes place, right? By observing yourself objectively and keeping your observation grounded in your actual experience, right, through the 4 components as we just discussed, and reminding yourself using the mantra, using a short word or phrase to remind yourself what it is, and bring your focus and attention back to your present experience, your object of meditation, such as the rising and falling of your stomach, you begin to see, this is the way the mind works. The mind likes to go off and have a thought, right? And then there's an interpretation and judgment of that thought, and we have an emotional reaction to it, and we behave based on those emotions. And that's how we cause our own suffering and stress and worry, right? So here's another point in the theory that I want to continue to mention before I reflect on how my experience went. The practice of meditation is more than just walking back and forth and sitting still. The benefit one gains from meditation practice depends on the quality of one's mind at each moment, not the quantity of practice one undertakes. So this is an important point to illustrate. I myself probably am guilty of falling into this trap many times before and still do. How, the mind likes to measure progress by the amount of time that you're doing meditation. But in reality, in truth, the learning takes place as a result of the quality of your meditation sessions. So the first important principle is that meditation must be practiced in the present moment, right? Because in the present moment is where our experience of reality really occurs, right? It's not lost in a thought about the past or in the future, right? So each experience only lasts for a single moment. So it is important to note experiences at the moment they occur, recognizing their arising, persisting, and ceasing, using the mantra to create a clear awareness of their essential nature. Only in this way can we come to understand the true nature of reality. Meditation is meant to cultivate clarity and understanding, free from addiction, aversion, and delusion, and therefore free from suffering. So sorry about that boring theory part, but I think it's important to lay this out because this was a practice that I tried to follow throughout the 7 days, but more especially so during the last 4 days, right? Okay, so how did my experience went? Beforehand, as I've talked about in one of my previous videos, I have been on one meditation retreat before in Chiang Mai last year. It was a wonderful learning experience. It was only 3 days, great for a beginner like me. And I have been keeping a meditation habit. I try to meditate each night before I sleep. Meditate, try to go for an hour per night, but if I don't have enough time, then maybe 15-20 minutes is still good, right? But before I took on and tried this retreat and really studied the material here as I read to you, which again, link in the description, I really recommend you to read it. It's very clear, very easy to follow, right? I realized that I was doing it wrong. I was too loose in my practice, right? So when I read this, I thought, okay, let's give it a try. So here we go, my 7-day experience. The first few days, I was, a bit more relaxed in the rules that I imposed on myself because I'm trying to adjust to these new techniques, right? Which were more formal, so to say, and a bit more difficult. So the first day, I was, more relaxed. I allowed myself to watch videos and do some reading, but the content has to be related to the practice. So on the first day, on the start of the retreat, there was one moment when I was doing my walking meditation, right? Because Yutta Dhammam Bhikkhu also teaches walking meditation and sitting meditation. So he advises that you do both and try to keep a balance between the two, where you do walking meditation first and then sitting meditation follows, right? So during my walking meditation session in the evening, I realized how, before I get to the end of the line and turn again and walk back, that's what you do in the session, I realized that in the beginning of my walk, I felt a little bit of a negative emotion. Then as I would continue to walk, that negative emotion subsided and it changed to a positive one or the other way around. I don't remember which one came first. But the point is, once you observe yourself, you really understand more about the nature of reality and the nature of impermanence. Nothing lasts forever. Things come and go. Emotions and our thoughts and our feelings, they are like waves, so to say. They rise and they persist for a bit and they cease, right? And this comes and goes and we're often not aware that this happens. So we become identified with these emotions or these thoughts that arise. And from our perspective, we feel that it's real. So that sort of walking meditation session was a small aha moment for me, where I recognized how ironic it was, where I didn't even finish taking more than, maybe 5 meters of walking, step by step. And my emotions changed from a negative tone to a positive tone, right? And the meditation helped you to recognize that because you're trying to observe yourself in this practice. So that's number one. And in the first day as well, what I tried to do was, as advised by Yuttadhammo Bhikkhu, is even between breaks, or say when you're doing chores or cooking or going to the toilet or doing this and that, try to be mindful. Try to keep some sort of self-observation and remind yourself of the objective experience as you're having it. So for example, if I'm going to get up and go to a toilet, I have to try to maintain mindfulness that I'm walking, that I'm opening the door, I'm closing the door, I'm going to the toilet, or I'm preparing my food for dinner. And the examples go on. And I realized how hard that was to do. Much easier said than done. The mind always does these things on autopilot. And I would find myself, realizing that, shoot, I forgot to try to be mindful. What this shows is that, we're always living in the future moment. It's almost as if we do things on autopilot. And this is reflected in how I do my work too, once I reflect on it, to some extent, to a big extent actually, where you start to see that we're always doing something as a stepping stone to the next thing that we have to achieve, to the next goal that we have to somehow attain, that we somehow think that it's going to bring us fulfillment and happiness, but really, if you think about it, you're not in touch with reality when you live life that way. And that's how we normally function, and I certainly function that way myself. The point of sharing this reflection is because we often think that we want to hurry with this present moment thing that we're doing, right? Like, just get cooking finished so I can go back to my practice, when in fact being mindful of cooking was the practice and I forgot to do that. Just go to the toilet quickly to get to the next point of the practice, to get to the next meditation session. Again, we look at things as a stepping stone because we somehow have led ourselves to believe that our happiness or fulfillment in life will lie in the achievement of some future concept or goal we've set. But what this really shows is that if you can't build a relationship, if you can't build a healthy relationship with the present moment, with the objective experience of reality, and be content in that, then, when you achieve that thing, it will satisfy you for a short while, but it will never truly fulfill you. So that was a nice sort of like reflecting moment at night for me to reflect on how my first day went. So that's day number 1. Day number 2. Day number 2 was interesting because before I had started this practice, I had told my relatives, which is my next door neighbor, my cousins and my other side of the family, that, hey, I'm going to be doing this solo meditation retreat. I'm not going to be speaking the entire time. I'm going to be maintaining silence. I'm going to be like a hermit, keeping myself in the house the entire time. So please understand and forgive me if I'm not coming or interacting. And also, please understand, please don't disturb. And on the second day, which was, I believe that was on Monday, I wrote a lot of notes. So yeah, yes, that was on Monday, right? All of a sudden, they were doing a lot of activity, working on the garden in my house or something like that. Maybe the gardener came and decided to do some work on the trees and did a lot of things on the outside of the house. A lot of housework, in the area, in the premises. And it was really, really loud and disturbing to my meditation sitting session. But of course, that's the whole point of the practice itself, right? Is to observe what you're hearing, what you're feeling, what you're thinking. So when you hear that noise, the point of the practice is to tell yourself, hearing, 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 and try to bring your attention or your awareness back to your default object of meditation, which is your stomach, the rising and falling of your stomach. The interesting thing is, I tried to do that, note hearing, hearing, hearing. But as it got louder and got more annoying, and as I realized that they weren't going to be done anytime soon, I started to notice thoughts start to come up. And they started to have an interpretation and a judgment to it. And I began to actually feel upset, even angry perhaps. So again, I tried to follow the practice and note my emotions, anger, anger, anger. And try to see things from what they are. Try to see anger arising and try to pull my attention back to my present experience. It was a really interesting experience, an interesting moment, because as you're practicing this, as you're maintaining self-awareness, observing your own emotions and your own thoughts, observing the anger rise. You see, or I saw, how the mind works. The mind goes on this narrative why you feel that what they're doing is rude or wrong or whatever, which they had good intentions to help around the house to make things nicer. Maybe it was the wrong timing, but the intention was good. But the mind, because it felt disturbed, it felt upset, it felt bothered, and you have this narrative where the mind tries to blame them, tries to judge them for this selfish behavior, even though I asked them to please be do not disturb, or something like that. But then you see how the mind tries to get you to follow along on the storyline that it's trying to tell you in order for you to get upset and angry, right? In order for you to feel justified in your anger and react based on that. So the mind was going on in this story where, after this meditation session ends, after this 3-day ends, I'm going to go there and tell them that, please, why did you do this? And tell them that, I wasn't happy with whatever. You see how when you're observing yourself, you see how the mind plays its narrative. And it's really interesting, because if you're not aware, you become completely identified with these thought processes. And that's how we create our own emotional reactions, our own anger, our own suffering. Because if I was not aware, right, if I got upset, went there and gave them my word, gave them my thoughts, let them have it, what would have happened? Probably an argument, probably a conflict, right? So this is exactly how we create our own suffering, through our likes and dislikes, through our thoughts, interpretations, and judgments of thoughts. But the practice of meditation helps you to see that very clearly, that thoughts are nothing more than thoughts, even if it's a good one or a bad one. See them clearly for what they are, nothing more, without adding interpretation, without adding judgment, and focus your attention back on your present experience or reality. The loud noise is disturbing, so what? It's nothing more than noise. So label it as hearing. And yeah, so that was really a good session, even though it did not intend to be like that, right? But I think I learned a lot from being disturbed by the work that they were doing around the garden. So that was day 2. Very interesting there. So another important thing that I wrote here in my notes that I want to share is, it's interesting to see how the mind reacts to your own resistance. So for example, if you have a thought or an emotion that arises in your mind, and you note to yourself, you call out the emotion that you're feeling, right? Say anger, sadness, doubt, fear, or if you don't know what exactly the emotion is, just tell to yourself, feeling, right? The thing is, oftentimes, especially new to the practice, you have this subtle, it's very subtle, but this very subtle hope that if you note that thought or that experience, then it'll go away. So implied in the noting, if you're doing it incorrectly, is you have a hope or an expectation that it'll make you feel less angry. It'll make you feel more calm again. But the irony is, actually when you do that, it actually comes from a place of resistance. So you're actually making it worse for yourself, ironically, right? If you say anger, angry, or feeling angry, but you're not doing it just to note and see it for what it is, but you're doing it because you want to stop it, so to say. You're only going to stimulate that emotion to make it worse. And I sort of felt that during the first, certainly the first day or 2 of my meditation. Not necessarily in that experience with the disruption and the noise going on, but in general. So the mind starts to learn that the point is to see it clearly, then it lets go of any reactivity to it. And you start to see that very little, bit by bit. And I think it's a very important point to make in this reflection. And as I said, Yuttadhammo Bhikkhu, he has his own YouTube channel, and I was fortunate enough to do this meditation retreat at a time where he was doing many question and answer sessions, Q&A sessions. And one of the commenters asked, asked a question similar to that, like, you know, how do you note without having this sense of hope? Or if you're feeling angry, do you note calm, to try to calm yourself down? And the monk gave a very good answer that you note it for what they are. Because if you try to, you know, note the opposite feeling in order to get yourself to feel calm when in fact you're angry, it's actually coming from a place of resistance. So that's a good point that I want to share. Okay, so then comes the next few days, where for the next few days I began to experience doubt and doubt in the practice and a lot of frustration. Why? Because I wasn't getting any more aha moments in learning, and that's exactly, again, how we function, right? We always look at things as a goal. We always want to achieve that thing, want to get that thing. But this meditation practice, the learning is the process itself, right? So I started to become frustrated because after doing formal meditation for 2 or 3 days, my body began to feel quite tense and sore. So it felt like, you know, I felt tired and sore, and doubts came in, and because of doubt, you can really see a reduction in my confidence. That am I doing the right practice? Is this really worth it to spend 7 days to do this? And from that comes worry and frustration, right? Because the mind wants results. The mind wants results. The mind wants results. And it's funny because when I read the booklet that Yuttadhammo Bhikkhu wrote about how to practice, it was very clear, you know, if you want something, you note it in your practice. Wanting. If I want results, if I want to feel peaceful from my meditation practice, if I want to feel calm, but I'm not feeling calm, right? Note to yourself, wanting, right? Because suffering comes from wanting, but not being able to get what you want, right? So that was an interesting learning experience because I understood it intellectually, but the mind didn't get it. It sort of was hitting myself against the wall for a few days, so to say, until my mind actually, you know what, said, that's it, I give in, I'm going to try to practice this in accordance with the teachings and not expect to get that result, or not expect to get that peaceful, calm, or blissful feeling, right? And when the mind finally gives in, it actually learns that, this is not the way to approach things. This is not a way to approach it with your wanting or your desire or expectations. And it really is one thing to understand this on an intellectual level, but it's another thing to really understand this through your mind. That's why I think that's really why they call it mental training. You're really training your mind. You're really teaching your mind how to approach things in life, so to say, and teaching yourself how to be more objective in your experience. So, you know, the next 3 days was very, very frustrating, and I felt like I doubted the process, as I said. Then finally, by the 5th or the 6th day, you know, as I said, I finally gave in. I finally accepted the process. I didn't expect to feel calm. I didn't expect results. I didn't expect to feel peaceful. I just tried to practice in accordance with the teachings, and it actually went great. It actually felt like I had let go to a certain extent, and the mind was able to practice in a more focused manner. And again, this is where learning really takes place. Sorry, I got cut off there. The camera sensor were too overheated, so it had to cut off. The last thing that I want to share, which I think is the most important thing from this learning experience, is what self-observation or self-awareness, or what this practice, what it cultivates for you. So I'll give you an example. Throughout the week, I had some similar thought patterns that kept on coming up about some past event or something in the past that I didn't like, that maybe it was about an experience or with somebody that I know, right? You know, and when you practice this, when you practice identifying the thoughts before they get interpreted and judged and therefore create an emotion that leads to your suffering, such as an emotion of sadness, maybe feeling bitter, maybe feeling regret, maybe feeling whatever, you name it, right? It really does work, self-awareness. So for example, even if I'm doing this in my walking meditation or sitting meditation, let's say the thought comes up about some past event or perhaps some future thing that perhaps I'm worried about, okay? And when you identify it for what it is, thinking, the quicker you identify it, the easier it is to bring yourself back to your present experience in the present moment. So I tell myself, thinking. No matter if the thoughts were a good one or a bad one, right? And I try to divert or bring my attention or my focus back to the rising and falling of my stomach in each and every breath, or the stepping right or stepping left of my movement if I'm doing walking meditation. And what I found was it actually works. Your mind actually learns to let go of that thought pattern and come back focused and anchored in present moment, in the present moment, in your present experience. Because why? Because usually before I try this practice and before I learn this skill, so to say, my natural or default reaction to a thought that I don't like would be sort of like I would have to argue with myself and overanalyze it until I arrive to a conclusion where I feel happy or satisfied with. Because I have a very analytical mind, right? I'm always trying to analyze things. I have a monkey mind. That's how I function. So I thought about the past event, that produces some negative emotion, whatever it is. My natural tendency is to sort of analyze it or argue with myself until I feel satisfied with it. Sure, that may work, but it's very tiring. It takes a lot of time. And by the time you get successful in calming yourself down, sooner or later, quite quickly, that thought will come up again, right? So it's very resource consuming, very time consuming, and not efficient, not effective. Right? And often before you get to that conclusion that you're happy with, you create a lot of suffering for yourself because you've probably gone through the negative emotion that comes as a result of the judgment or interpretation of that thought. But once you learn to identify thinking for what they are, just thoughts, nothing more than that, even a good one or a bad one. Identify that for what they are before you have an interpretation and a judgment of it. And try to pull your attention back to the present moment, your current experience, what reality is. Then, as I said, the mind actually lets go, learns to let go, learns to not need to go through that chain of thinking that creates this story and interpretation and judgment that produces negative feelings, negative emotions for yourself. So the mind starts to learn that. And I think it's really powerful. Self-observation is therefore really powerful. This practice, this meditation practice, again, I really, really see the power in it. And I cannot stress enough that, I really encourage you to check out the link and to read for yourself, try it for yourself. Don't take my word for it. Because once you really learn about how your mind works, you become more objective. You see things more clearly. You learn to identify things for what they are. And from that, you react much less to your emotions. And oftentimes when we react to our emotions, we make the thing worse, right? We react out of fear, out of anger, out of sadness, or whatever. We only make the situation worse for ourselves and for others around us. So this helps you to really manage your stress, manage your emotions, and reduce your own suffering. And the thing is, once you understand this process in yourself, more and more, learn about this more and more, you start to develop an inclination to be more compassionate and to forgive others more as well, because you understand that the same process goes on in their mind. A thought comes up, they're completely identified with it, unaware so, completely identified with the thought process, have a story that happens around that thought, there's a judgment, an interpretation, and a negative emotion arises, and suffering. So, and this was also explained, these benefits from meditation is also explained in the booklet that I shared briefly some parts of in the beginning of the video. And again, I really recommend you to check it out, read it for yourself, try it, especially if you're already interested in meditation, right? To develop clarity is a very important life skill, I would argue, and I cannot emphasize this enough. So I want to end today's video on that last reflection, right? That it really works. You don't have to follow the train of thoughts until they become some emotional judgment that produces very perhaps negative or hurtful feelings. Okay? I hope this self-reflection video from my experiences on my 7-day retreat at home is helpful and valuable for you, and hope it encourages you to see the value of this practice and again, try it for yourself. The link's gonna be in the comments or in the description box if you're on YouTube, and also in my next post on Facebook. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for your patience. I appreciate you for staying tuned. I'll see you next time. สวัสดีครับ